Jed Hawk Myers was 34 years old when he died shortly after midnight on May 28, 2015 at the Yamhill County Jail. Myers' death could have been prevented. He was assaulted in his cell, E28, at 7:08 p.m. on May 27th by two other inmates. Someone used the cell intercom to call for help, and at 7:25, Deputy Intern Colleen McNamara and Deputy Kiara Downs came up the stairs to the second level of E Block. They made their way along the upper tier to E28, where they found Myers.
As we went to walk into the cell, Myers stepped out of the cell and walked towards me and was incoherent because I kept telling him to stop walking towards me, and he kept walking towards me. I said it 3 times until I finally stopped him in his place. He was sweaty and panting, and he said his chest hurt. And I said, "Where does it hurt?" And he touched his stomach. And so I asked again, "What hurts?" And he said his chest. And I asked again because, to me, this is your chest and this is your stomach, and he put his hand on the side of his stomach. I was trying to figure out if he was coherent to where the pain was coming from.
McNamara and Downs entered Myers' cell. McNamara described Myers as having a dislocated shoulder.
At that point, Myers took off his shirt, and I could tell that his shoulder, what I observed to be, was dislocated. There was something protruding towards the front, and the shoulder did not look like a normal shoulder. I observed a sore on the front and back of his shoulders, what I would call an open sore. It wasn't bleeding, but it was shiny. You could tell that it was open. It looked relatively fresh. I didn't see any scabbing, but it was not bleeding.
McNamara, Downs, and 2 other deputies escorted Myers from E28 to a cell in the med unit. Inmates along the way noticed Myers was in pain.
He had to stop, and he was holding his side, and he had to lean up against the wall. And they were like, "Can you sit down?" And he was like, "Oh, it hurt, I'm in pain." He was screaming, basically. It looked like he cracked a rib and something punctured him or something like that.
I was sitting on the stairs and I just heard a guy talking about pain. He looked pretty pale, and he ran into the door as he was walking out, kind of stumbling,
At 7:31 p.m., Myers arrived at Med Cell B. Deputies continued to examine him. Deputy Downs noted the injury to Myers' shoulder.
He's sitting down, he's still holding his chest. He keeps moving his shoulder, so, there was a big bump, but I couldn't tell what kind of injury it was.
Myers appeared to be bothered by his shoulder and appeared to be wincing with pain. As Deputy Roger Swift got Myers a glass of water, Deputy Downs noticed a bump on the side of Myers' head and pointed it out to Swift.
And I also noticed a contusion on his head, on his right side, because that's on the side I was standing. A red bump on the side of his head, just above the ear.
Myers continued to show signs of pain and disorientation, lying down, rolling back and forth, and then sitting back up. Medical technician Kevin Thurman came to the cell to examine Myers.
He's kind of agitated, but not I'm going to fight you agitated. Just unsettling, just couldn't sit still. I'm trying to just say, you need to stop screaming, what's going on? And I put our pulse ox on his finger, and his heart rate was 130, and he was, his oxygen level was 99%. And I tried probably 5 or 6 times to get a blood pressure on him, and he wouldn't sit. I couldn't even get him to sit still. He would flex or move, and so the machine kept coming up with errors. So I never got a blood pressure on him.
At about 7:37 p.m., Thurman gave up on getting a blood pressure reading. Myers appeared to be complaining about his side and his shoulder. MedTech Thurman wondered about Myers' sweating.
The thing that stuck out is that he was rapid heart rate and sweaty, and you can't fake being sweaty. But then, he's sweaty and tachycardic, so I'm something's going on.
Despite Thurman's concerns, he left the cell at 7:38 and did not return. His shift ended at 10. Thurman was the only medically trained staff member to examine Myers in the hours before his death. Myers continued to grimace and squirm. Sweat was evident on his upper body. Deputies Tamara Hart and Roger Swift were the last 2 deputies in Myers' cell while he was alive. At 7:43, Swift left, and then a few seconds later, Hart left. Myers was left alone in his cell. He appeared to be crying out. Then he got up and went to the door, where it appeared he pushed the intercom button for help. The intercom for Med Cell B is to the left of the door. Myers sat back down. He continued to yell or scream, sometimes clutching his side. He lay back down but didn't look comfortable. He was sweating and calling out. It looked like he might have yelled, "Help me." Nearby in Med Cell E, inmate Thomas O'Donnell reported he could hear Myers screaming. Oh, he sat there and screamed. He kept screaming, "Help me, help me." He screamed. He screamed, he screamed, he screamed, to the point, like I said, I got up there and pushed the button. Like I said, he just kept screaming. I didn't understand why they didn't take him to the hospital. At 7:45, Myers was back at the intercom. He made several trips to the door and the intercom that night. None of the calls were answered. Deputy Hart explained the intercom would be deactivated for an inmate who was judged to be overly needy.
We have an ability to disable an intercom in our holding cells, in our medical cells, and generally they will be disabled because we will have somebody in there that is just very needy, and they're always on it. So between them just pushing it because they're upset about something, they're not getting their way or their attention, and so in that instance, we'll put their cell up on a screen, just kind of monitor them.
Myers' cell could be monitored in the jail control room on a 1/9 section of a large screen TV. Deputies monitoring his cell would have seen Myers yelling and writhing on his bed. His side appeared to be bothering him. He looked sweaty. He appeared to be in pain. At 7:48, he was back to the door and the intercom. Another call for help. He returned to the door at 7:50. Back at the bed, he sat down, clutching his stomach, in obvious pain. A couple of minutes later, he rolled to the side and onto the floor of his cell. He looked like he was trying to get comfortable, one position after another to see what worked. Again, it looked like he was saying, "Help me." He returned to the door and the intercom at 8:03. One more attempt to get someone's attention. Deputies began a series of security look-ins on Myers. Deputy Eric Klauser performed a check at 8:07. At that point, Myers was back lying on his bed. Deputy McNamara was back for another security check at 8:12. Again, Myers was lying on his bed. 2 minutes later, Myers returned to the door to push the intercom buzzer. To the door again at 8:20. A try for the intercom again at 8:27. At 8:30, he fell off his bunk and sprawled on the floor. After a short while, with some effort, he struggled to get up at 8:31 and made another attempt at the buzzer. At 8:38, Myers' cell was falling into disarray. It looked like he was becoming more disoriented. He made 2 more attempts at the door to get help at this time. Myers tried the door and the intercom again at 8:53. He sat back down and leaned against the wall. At 8:54, Myers got up to urinate in the toilet. When he was done and moved away, the previously clear water in the toilet was red. Blood in Myers' urine had turned the toilet water red. At 9:18, Deputy Downs was on the rounds for the security check and peeked in the door window of Med Cell B. She apparently saw the blood in the toilet because she stood at the door window for several seconds, staring into the cell. She was about to leave the medical cell area when she doubled back to look in the cell again. She told Sergeant Woody Little, the jail commander, about what she had seen, and he suggested the red color was Kool-Aid.
It was very watery, like it was water, but it was red, and so that one I was like, that's kind of odd to me, and I asked the sergeant what we have on the food that's red, and he said Kool-Aid. The juice pack was Kool-Aid. It was like raspberry flavored, or something red flavored.
Sergeant Little explained what led to his opinion that the red color was caused by some kind of food product.
Well, let's see, they had 3 sack lunches today, or sack meals, so grape jelly would have been in probably at least one of them. We also have fruit punch and God knows what else off the commissary cart that they have access to, so there's plenty of things.
Little said he wished Myers would have gone to the door and used the intercom to tell someone he was in distress.
I watched the video, I CJ'd it up, I see him go to the toilet, and I see that the water's red when he leaves. He's standing. All he has to do is walk over and push a button on the wall.
Of course, Myers had pushed the intercom button several times, and no one came to his aid. At 9:37, he was moving around on his bunk and fell off onto the floor. A few minutes later, at 9:41, he fell off again. The next round of security checks was at 10:03, and Deputy Clouser was the one making the rounds. If Clouser hadn't already seen the blood in the toilet from monitoring in the control room, he would have seen it on his look-in. Clouser explained from his observations, he thought Myers was on drugs.
When you see people come in on a constant basis, I mean, people on drugs have, erratic movement and seeing weird stuff and crawling around. And it depends on the drug or the time lapse that it's been on, or just like an alcohol detox. They do a lot of hallucinating, seeing things, crawling around.
At 10:43, it appeared Myers struggled to get something to drink from the sink in his cell. The next round of security checks was performed by Sergeant Little. When Little reached Myers' cell door, he spent a few seconds looking in. Something he saw in Myers' cell caused him to turn back and take another look. At that time, Myers appeared to be resting on his bed. The blood in the toilet was still easily seen. At 11:20, Myers was lying on the floor. He struggled to get up and made his way to the door. He was still trying to get the attention of someone who would either hear the intercom or see him go to the door on the security video. When he left the door, it looked like he fell to the floor and, in the process, hit the toilet. At 11:27, Myers made another trip to the door and the intercom. When he left the door, he stood by the toilet. He presumably flushed the toilet this time because when he stepped away, the toilet bowl water was clear. The blood had been visible for about 2.5 hours. In all, Myers made 19 trips to the door to push the button for help. From 11:31 to shortly after midnight, Myers made his final 5 trips to the door. Each time he went to the door to try and reach someone on the intercom, Myers had to struggle to get up for his final trip to the door at 12:06. All of his trips to the door were ignored. Deputies who saw him on the monitor going to the intercom to ask for help also ignored him. Deputy Dwayne McCommons was on duty for security checks at 12:11. He quickly glanced in Myers' cell. Myers was resting on the floor at the end of his bunk. Myers was apparently becoming weaker and weaker. He tried to get up at 12:19 and fell to the ground. He didn't look good. Deputy Clouser was monitoring Myers' cell from the control room at 12:24.
At one point, he propped himself up on the toilet and sat there, and he got up, kind of stood up, wobbled, and then slowly he got to the bunk at the edge, and he kind of leaned into it, and then he kind of fell against the wall, but real slow, like controlled, and then slid down that, and then kind of rolled onto the floor there.
At 12:33, Myers was propped up in a corner, and his head suddenly slumped forward. He never raised his head again. Apparently, the standard for an injured inmate to get help was to stop breathing. At 12:50, Deputy McCommons noticed that Myers wasn't moving and decided he should go up to the cell and check on him.
I commented, I said, he doesn't really look right. And Clouser and I was kind of checking him out. We're both looking. And I was getting ready to get up, and Clouser commented, maybe you should go check on him. So I got up and immediately went and checked on him.
Finally, at 12:52, early on the morning of Thursday, May 28, 2015, a deputy entered Myers' cell. After all Myers' attempts to raise someone on the intercom, and after all his calls for help, it was too late. Deputy McCommons described what he found.
I checked his pulse on his wrist and then reached up and did a check for his carotid artery, and I could feel no pulse. His skin felt cold and clammy.
Deputies Swift and Hart joined McCommons. They did what they could, but Myers was dead. Time of death was given at 1:15 a.m., but the security video showed he had stopped breathing about a half hour before that. The autopsy showed Jed Myers had a lacerated kidney. He had suffered massive internal bleeding. He had a broken rib. His right clavicle was broken. He also suffered an injury to the right side of his head and brain damage. The injuries stemmed from the assault Myers suffered shortly after 7 p.m. the day before. But his death was caused by the decisions made by the jail staff working under the policies and practices of Yamhill County. A well-equipped examination room is in the jail, but the records of Myers' death show no discussion of its possible use, and no one called for an ambulance. Myers' loved ones know that their son, nephew, and brother died alone in a cell at the county jail. Myers left behind a daughter, Lacey, who was 3 at the time of her father's death. The family agrees Myers was a good parent, a loving father. Jed Myers was 34 years old when he died inside the Yamhill County Jail. He was in jail for a parole violation and was scheduled to be released on May 28th, the day he died.